My name is Ryan, I'm 16 years old, and this happened last year, on a night of heavy rain here in the countryside of Indiana. My parents had gone out to visit some friends in another city and were only going to come back late at night, so I stayed home alone. It wasn't unusual, it had happened several times before. Our house is in a very quiet residential neighborhood, the kind with a fenced backyard, a garage in the front, and very little movement after a certain hour. That night, it started raining early in the evening, but later it got much heavier. It was that continuous heavy rain with wind, hitting the windows and making a constant noise. I was in my room playing on the computer, wearing headphones, but I could still hear the rain. Around 9 or 10 at night, I went to the kitchen to grab something to eat. The kitchen is at the back of the house with a large window that looks directly into the backyard. I've always had the habit of looking outside, more out of curiosity than anything else. At that moment, the rain was very heavy, and the backyard light was off, so I could only see the basics, slightly distorted by the water running down the glass. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a silhouette at the back of the yard. I couldn't see details, but it looked like a person standing there, near the fence, partially hidden by the darkness and the rain. I stared for a few seconds, trying to understand if it was just my mind misinterpreting something. I kept looking, trying to focus better, but the rain distorted everything. The silhouette didn't move. It didn't look like a normal object, like a tree or something in the yard. It was too tall and positioned where there shouldn't have been anything. I felt an immediate discomfort, that kind of feeling you get before you understand why. Without thinking much, I reached over and turned on the backyard light, the floodlight that illuminates almost everything outside. The light turned on instantly, and there was nothing there anymore. The spot where I had seen the silhouette was completely empty, just the wet yard, the fence, and the heavy rain. I stood there for a few seconds, staring, trying to process what had just happened. My first reaction was to think I had mistaken some shadow for movement, or that the rain had created some strange illusion. I even opened the window slightly, letting in that smell of wet earth and the louder sound of the rain, just to make sure there was no one there. I didn't see anyone, didn't hear anything unusual. I closed the window and turned off the outside light after a while, trying to ignore it. But as soon as I turned to go back to my room, I heard a sound that made me stop immediately, the side gate of the house and creaking. I froze in the middle of the kitchen, trying to listen better. The sound came again, clearer this time. It was the side gate, the metal one that gives access to the backyard from the side of the house. It always makes a specific creaking sound when it opens, kind of long and dragging, and it was exactly that sound. At that moment, my heart started beating faster, because there was no one who should have been coming in through there. My parents had left through the front garage, and no one had any reason to use that gate at that time of night, especially in that rain. I slowly walked toward the wall where the switch for the side light was, but I stopped before turning it on. I stood there listening for a few seconds. There was no more sound from the gate, but there was also no sound of footsteps walking away. It was just the rain, constant, hitting the ground and the fence. That made me even more tense because it meant that if someone had come in, they could be in the backyard. Or worse, already closer to the house. I grabbed my phone almost by reflex, not to call anyone, but as if it gave me some sense of control. I opened the camera without thinking much, more out of instinct than plan. I went back to the kitchen window, but this time without turning on the outside light. I tilted the phone slightly, trying to use the camera as a way to see better without exposing myself directly. The image was grainy due to the low light, with the rain distorting it even more, but I could still make out parts of the yard. I slowly moved it, trying to cover as much of the area as possible. At first, I saw nothing, just the empty yard, the fence, water pooling in some spots. Then I moved the camera slightly to the side, toward the narrow passage along the side of the house that connects the gate to the back. And there I saw movement. It wasn't fast or sudden. It was someone walking slowly, very close to the wall of the house. The figure was partially obscured by the darkness and the rain, but I could see the outline of a body. I froze instantly, gripping the phone tighter, trying not to make any movement that might reveal I was watching. The person didn't seem in a hurry. They were walking calmly but going around the house. I stayed there for a few seconds, watching through the phone screen, trying to understand what that person was doing. The movement was steady, slow, as if they were following the wall of the house with precision. It didn't look like someone trying to take shelter from the rain or trying to get in quickly. It was more like they were deliberately walking around the house, My heart was already racing, and I felt that tension rising in a way that was hard to ignore. I slowly pulled the phone away from the window, trying not to make any noise, and stood in the kitchen, just listening to the rain and trying to decide what to do. That's when I heard something different. A light sound very close. It wasn't coming from the entire yard anymore or from the gate. It was more localized. I slowly turned my head toward the hallway that leads to my room. The sound came again. A soft touch, like someone outside brushing against something. I took a few very slow steps, feeling the cold floor under my feet, and stopped near my bedroom door. My window was exactly on that side wall where the person had been walking. And at that moment, I had a certainty that made my stomach drop. Whoever was outside, it was now right next to my window. I stood there, not daring to get closer to the window. The rain continued heavily, hitting the glass, but even so, I could hear something different mixed in. A light, irregular sound, like someone very close, moving slowly. I tried to convince myself it could just be water running down, or something outside being pushed by the wind. But it didn't feel like that. It felt more controlled, more precise. I took another slow step and stood beside the wall, still not looking directly at the window. My breathing was short, and I realized I was holding it without meaning to. Carefully, I raised the phone again, and instead of looking directly, pointed the camera toward the window. The image appeared dark with reflections from the indoor light, but I could see part of the outside. At first, there was nothing clear, just rain and darkness. Then, adjusting the angle slightly, I saw it, a figure standing very close to the glass. So close that part of the body was out of frame. I couldn't see the face clearly, just the outline. But I could see that it was there, standing right in front of my window. I froze immediately. It wasn't a quick scare. It was that full body freeze, like my body didn't know what to do. The figure didn't move. It didn't knock on the window, didn't try to open it, didn't make any gesture. It was just there, too close. I could see water running down the person's body mixed with the rain, forming lines along the outline. My first reaction was to take a step back, very slowly without taking my eyes off the phone screen. I had the clear feeling that if I made any sudden movement, something would change. I stepped back a few more times, completely leaving the window's line of sight. The sound of the rain remained the same, but now it felt more distant, as if all my attention was focused only on that presence outside. I didn't want to look again, but at the same time I needed to be sure. I raised the phone once more, now from a greater distance, and pointed it toward the window. The image took a second to adjust, and the figure was no longer there. The space in front of the glass was empty, just the rain hitting hard. I felt an immediate relief, but it didn't last even a few seconds, because almost at the same moment I heard a sound coming from the front of the house. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make me freeze again. A light impact, followed by something being dragged briefly. That sound was no longer coming from the side. I stood in the hallway trying to decide whether to go to the living room or stay where I was. My mind started racing with possibilities, none of them good. I didn't know where that person was now, and that was worse than knowing. After a few seconds, I went toward the living room very slowly, keeping the phone in my hand. The lights were still off there, so the room was dim, lit only by faint light from the street coming through the front window. I approached carefully without making noise and looked through a small gap in the curtain. At first, I didn't see anything, just the rain falling in the front yard and reflections of streetlights on the wet ground. But then, looking more closely, I noticed something on the ground near the entrance. The porch chair was out of place, slightly moved, as if someone had touched it just moments before. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the chair, trying to understand if it had already been like that and I just hadn't noticed. But the more I looked, the clearer it became that it hadn't. It was turned in a strange way, out of its normal position, as if it had been pushed. And then I noticed something else. The front door wasn't fully closed. It wasn't wide open, but there was a small gap, almost imperceptible if you weren't paying attention. My stomach dropped instantly. I was sure the door had been locked. I took a step back without thinking, feeling my heart racing. The silence inside the house felt heavier than before, as if any sound would stand out too much. I stood there, staring at the door, waiting for any movement. Nothing. No sound from outside, no sign of someone trying to come in further. Just the rain, but that didn't help. Because now the question wasn't whether someone was in the yard. It was whether someone had already come inside. I didn't go to the door, not at that moment. I slowly backed away, keeping my eyes on it, and went back toward the hallway. I moved down the hallway, trying not to make any noise. with that very clear feeling that anything could happen at any moment. My mind was trying to keep up with everything at once, the yard, the window, the front door, and now the possibility of someone being inside the house with me. I stopped for a second, trying to listen for any sign, any different movement, and that's when I heard it, a light sound, coming from the living room. It wasn't the rain. It was inside, like a step, short, controlled. My whole body froze instantly. I didn't move. I stood there in the hallway, phone in hand, barely even blinking. The sound came again, a slight shift, like someone stepping carefully, trying not to make noise. And it was coming from the direction of the front door. That meant someone had moved through there, inside the house. I felt a cold sensation run through my body that had nothing to do with temperature. At that moment, there was no doubt anymore. I was not alone. I backed away a few more steps without taking my eyes off the dark hallway, trying to put distance between us without making any sound. I moved back until I reached the far wall of the hallway, trying to keep distance without losing sight of what was happening. My breathing was short, and I tried to control it as much as possible to stay silent. The sound in the living room stopped for a few seconds, and then came back. Closer this time. One step, then another, slow measured. I couldn't see anything from there, just the darkness of the hallway and the faint light coming from the living room. But I could feel that it was getting closer. Every second felt longer than normal, as if time itself was dragging. That's when I did the only thing that came to my mind at that moment. I stepped into my room slowly and closed the door without making noise. I locked it immediately. I stood there leaning against the door, holding my phone tightly, trying to decide whether to call the police or my parents. And in that silence, I heard the last sound. From the other side of my bedroom door, a light touch on the doorknob. It wasn't an attempt to force it open. It was slow, like someone testing it. And it stayed there for a few seconds, still, as if it knew exactly where I was. Story 2. My name is Lauren. I'm 31 years old and I live alone in a ground floor apartment in a small town in the interior of Georgia. I work in online customer support, so I spend most of my time at home, especially at night, because my schedule is a bit inverted due to clients. My apartment is in a low building with few units, and the entrance leads directly to a small external corridor. Nothing very busy. It has always been a quiet place, the kind where you hardly see anyone after a certain hour. That night, it had been raining heavily since the afternoon, and the weather only got worse as the night went on. It was a heavy, constant rain, with wind hitting the windows and making that continuous sound that can sometimes even feel calming. I was in the living room with my laptop on my lap, working as usual. The lights were on, everything normal, nothing out of the ordinary. Around 11 at night, I remember stopping for a few minutes to get some water in the kitchen, and then going back to the couch. That's when I heard the first sound. Very faint, almost imperceptible in the middle of the rain, but it was distinct. A slight turn of the doorknob on the main door. I stopped immediately, completely still, trying to confirm if I had heard it right. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then it came again. Clearer this time. Someone was turning the doorknob from the outside, slowly. I didn't move. I stood there in the middle of the room holding the glass, trying not to make any sound. The first thing that crossed my mind was that it could be a neighbor confusing the doors, but that didn't feel like someone trying to enter normally. It was too slow, too controlled, as if the person was testing, not actually trying to open it. The doorknob turned again, this time a bit longer, as if someone was applying more pressure. I felt my stomach tighten instantly. I was sure the door was locked. I always lock it. I placed the glass on the table very slowly, almost without making a sound, and stood there trying to listen better. The sound of the rain was still strong, but that noise from the doorknob stood out in a way that couldn't be ignored. It came again, a slow turn, then a short pause, and then another. It was as if the person was trying to figure out whether, at some point, the door would give in. I automatically looked toward the door, even knowing I wouldn't see anything through it. My whole body was tense, and I realized I was holding my breath without meaning to. After a few more attempts, the sound suddenly stopped. There was no final stronger movement, no push on the door. It just stopped. I remained still, waiting to hear something next. A knock, a voice, any sign that someone was there for a normal reason. But nothing came. Just the rain steady outside. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps. Slow, moving away from the door. That gave me a quick, almost automatic sense of relief. as if the situation had ended, but that relief didn't last long, because I kept listening to the footsteps, waiting to hear something more. A gate opening, someone going downstairs, the sound of a car, anything that indicated the person had really left. None of that happened. The footsteps simply disappeared into the sound of the rain. Without transition, without continuation, that was what made that bad feeling come back stronger, because it didn't seem like the person had left the building. It felt like they had just stopped making noise. I stayed there for a while longer, staring at the door, trying to decide if it was really over. My mind kept going back and forth between simple explanations and that feeling that something was wrong. I thought about just ignoring it and going back to work, but I couldn't. I needed to know if someone was still there. I slowly walked to the door, each step sounding louder than it should have. My heart was beating faster, and I felt my hand slightly trembling as I approached. I stood there for a few seconds in front of the door, without looking through the peephole yet. Just listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no movement, nothing but the rain. Then very slowly I leaned in and looked through the peephole. At first I couldn't understand what I was seeing. The image was dark, distorted by the lens. But then it became clear. There was a shadow there, standing on the other side of the door, motionless. I froze instantly, still with my eye on the peephole, trying to understand what I was seeing. The shadow didn't move. I couldn't see a face or details of the body, just a presence there very close to the door. What disturbed me the most was the position. It didn't look like someone passing through the hallway. It looked like someone standing exactly in front of my door, as if they were waiting. I slowly stepped back without making noise, feeling that chill run through my body. I stood a few steps away, trying to process it. My first reaction was to think about calling the police, but at the same time, it felt absurd to say that someone was just standing outside doing nothing. I moved closer again, this time even more slowly, and looked through the peephole once more. The shadow was still there, in exactly the same position, without any movement. That didn't seem normal in any way. It was as if the person knew I was inside, and was just waiting for me to do something. I stepped back again, this time faster, trying to keep distance from the door. My mind started thinking about practical things, like whether the door was really locked, whether the windows were closed, whether there was any other possible entrance. I went to the kitchen to check the back window, then to the bedroom just to be sure. Everything was as it should be, closed, locked. Even so, that feeling didn't go away, because I knew there was someone on the other side of the door, and that person wasn't leaving. When I returned to the living room, I stood there for a few seconds trying to decide what to do. That's when I heard it again, very faint, almost imperceptible. The doorknob moving. Not a full turn this time, just a slight movement, as if someone was carefully touching it. That made my body freeze again. It was as if the person was still there, testing it again, even knowing they hadn't been able to open it before. I stood looking toward the door without moving, trying not to make any sound that could indicate I was nearby. After that slight movement, another came, a bit firmer but still slow. The doorknob turned to its limit and returned, making that dry metal sound. I felt my heart race even more, to the point where I could hear it in the silence between the sounds of the rain. I took a step back without realizing, as if my body was trying to move away on its own, and then it stopped again. No movement, no sound of footsteps moving away, nothing. That was what made me the most nervous, because it meant the person was still there. I stood there for a few seconds trying to decide whether to look through the peephole again. Part of me didn't want to confirm it again, but another part needed to know. I slowly walked to the door, feeling each step as if I were being watched. I leaned in again and looked. The shadow was still there, in the same position, motionless, not closer, not farther, exactly the same. That gave me a strange feeling of time being frozen, as if nothing was changing outside. I stepped back once more, trying to keep distance from the door, but without taking my eyes off it. My mind was no longer trying to find simple explanations. It had gone past that point. I thought about grabbing something to protect myself, but at the same time, I had no idea what I would do if the person actually managed to get in. I stood there trying to hear anything that indicated the next move. And that's when something happened that made me freeze in a different way. The doorknob didn't move this time. Instead, I heard a light touch on the door, not a normal knock. Not someone calling. It was something slow, like someone placing their hand and lightly dragging it across the wood, a sliding sound almost too soft for the situation. That gave me a very bad feeling, hard to explain. It was too intimate, too close. I felt a shiver run up my entire arm and I stood completely still. After that touch, nothing else came. No sound, no movement, just silence and the rain outside. I stood there not knowing how much time had passed. The silence after that touch felt even heavier than before. It was as if any sound had been removed from the environment. I looked at the door, waiting for any movement. The doorknob turning again, footsteps moving away, any reaction, but nothing came. At some point, I realized I was breathing very slowly, almost trying not to make any sound at all, as if that could change something. The rain continued outside, steady, but it felt distant now. After a few minutes, I approached the peephole once again. I didn't want to look, but I needed to. I leaned in slowly and pressed my eye against it. At first, I saw nothing. The lens showed only the empty hallway, with the faint light reflecting on the wet floor. I stayed there for a few seconds, trying to adjust my vision, waiting for the shadow to appear again. But there was no one there. The space in front of the door was completely empty. That should have made me feel relieved. But it didn't, because I hadn't heard the person leave. I hadn't heard any footsteps. I slowly stepped away from the door, still looking at it as if expecting something to happen again at any moment. The fact that there was no one outside didn't make me feel safer. On the contrary, it felt like the situation had changed in a way I couldn't keep up with. I stood there for a few seconds in the middle of the room, trying to decide what to do. That's when a thought came to my mind very clearly. If the person was no longer outside, and then where were they? I automatically turned my head toward the rest of the apartment, as if seeing that space for the first time. Everything looked the same. The couch, the table, the kitchen in the back. But it didn't feel the same. I took a slow step back, looking around, trying to listen for anything. And that's when I heard it. A faint sound coming from inside the apartment. Not from the door, not from the window, from inside. A slight shift, like someone stepping carefully somewhere I couldn't see from where I stood. My whole body froze instantly. Story 3. My name is Mark, I'm 39 years old, and I live in a small residential town in the interior of Texas. I work in logistics at a local company, so my schedule is a bit irregular, but I usually get home at night. That particular week it had rained practically every day, and that night was no different. The rain was steady, nothing too extreme, but enough to leave everything wet, dark, and with that continuous sound hitting the car as I drove. I remember feeling tired more than usual, just thinking about getting home, eating something, and going to sleep. When I turned onto my street, everything was quiet as always. Houses with their interior lights on, no movement on the street. I parked in front of the garage and pressed the remote to open the automatic door. The door started to rise with that normal motor sound, slightly dragging. That's when I noticed something strange. The garage light was already on. That light doesn't turn on automatically. It only turns on if someone flips the switch from inside. I kept watching as the door went up, trying to remember if for some reason I had left that light on before I left. I didn't remember. The door kept rising slowly, revealing more of the garage as it opened. I was still inside the car, engine running, watching. That's when I saw it. At the back of the garage, near the shelves where I keep some tools, there was a figure. It wasn't fully visible because of the shadows, but you could see the outline of someone standing there. Not moving, not doing anything, just standing there. My body reacted instantly. I stopped breathing for a second, trying to understand if it was real or just some effect of light and shadow. The door finished opening completely, and the moment the street light illuminated the interior better, there was no one there anymore. The space at the back of the garage was empty. The shelves, the boxes, everything exactly as always. I sat there in the car for a few seconds, staring at that spot, waiting to see some movement, anything that would confirm I hadn't imagined it. But nothing came. Just the sound of the rain and the car engine still running. I didn't get out of the car immediately. I stayed there, hands on the steering wheel, trying to process what I had just seen. Part of me wanted to just close the garage and leave, drive around, anything. But that didn't make sense. It was my house. I tried to rationalize it, thinking it could have been some shadow projected in a strange way by the light. Some reflection from the car. Anything like that. I took a deep breath, turned off the engine, and grabbed the keys. I stayed a few more seconds before opening the door, looking again toward the back of the garage. Still empty. I got out of the car slowly, feeling the damp air from the rain mixed with the typical smell of the garage, a mix of concrete and oil. The floor inside was dry with no sign of footprints or water being tracked in from outside. That was the first thing I noticed without even realizing it. If someone had entered there during the rain, there should have been some kind of trace, something on the ground. But there was nothing. I walked a few steps inside, looking around, trying to spot anything out of place. Nothing looked different. Even so, that feeling that I wasn't alone didn't go away. I walked deeper into the garage slowly, keeping my eyes on that corner where I had seen the figure. Each step sounded louder than usual, echoing slightly in the enclosed space. I looked behind the shelves, between the boxes, even crouched a bit to see if someone could be hiding there. Nothing. Everything in place, no sign that anyone had been there recently. That should have reassured me, but it didn't, because I knew what I had seen just seconds before the door fully opened. After a few minutes in there, finding nothing, I decided to go into the house. The internal garage door was right there, the one that leads directly into the kitchen. I always keep it locked, it's a habit. When I approached it, I already felt something was off before even touching it. The door wasn't fully closed. It was just resting against the frame, a small gap, almost imperceptible, but enough to tell it wasn't locked. My stomach dropped instantly. I was absolutely sure I had locked that door when I left earlier. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the door without touching it. My mind went back to the moment I left the house earlier, trying to remember exactly if I had locked it. And the more I thought about it, the more certain I was that I had. I always turn the key twice, it's automatic. This didn't make sense. I slowly reached out and pushed the door, opening it carefully. The kitchen was dark, with only a faint light coming from the living room further inside. Everything looked normal at first glance. I stepped in slowly, feeling the cold floor under my still slightly wet shoes. I stood at the kitchen entrance, listening. The house was too quiet. Not the normal kind of quiet, but a heavy silence like any sound would stand out too much. I looked around trying to find anything out of place. Nothing seemed clearly disturbed. The table, the chairs, everything as usual. Even so, the feeling that something wasn't right only grew stronger. I took a few more steps inside, body tense, trying not to make any noise. I walked further into the kitchen, trying to see the rest of the house better. The living room light was still on, which wasn't unusual, but at that moment it felt out of place. I was almost sure I had turned it off before leaving. I stood there for a second, just watching the entrance to the living room, waiting for any movement. Nothing. Just that strange silence, occasionally broken by the sound of rain hitting the roof. That's when I heard it. A faint sound, coming from inside the house. Not from the garage, not from the kitchen. Further ahead, it sounded like a step, short, as if someone moving carefully. I froze immediately. My breathing slowed down automatically, as if my body was trying not to make any noise. The sound came again, a bit clearer this time. There was no doubt. Someone was inside, somewhere in the house. And it wasn't hurried movement. It was slow, controlled. I stood there trying to locate exactly where the sound was coming from. It seemed to come from the living room, but at the same time it could be a bit further ahead, maybe in the hallway that led to the bedrooms. I took a slow step, then another, moving toward the entrance to the living room. Each movement felt too loud, even though I was trying to be as quiet as possible. When I got close enough to see part of the room, I stopped again. The living room was empty. The couch, the coffee table, everything in place. No visible sign of anyone there. But the silence didn't reassure me, because I still felt like I wasn't alone. I moved a little further, now completely inside the living room, looking around more carefully. That's when I noticed something different. The hallway door was open. I never leave that door open. Never. That gave me an immediate sense of alert. I stared at that spot, trying to listen again. And then it came. Another faint sound, coming from inside the hallway. Closer now. I stood there in the living room, staring at the open hallway, trying to decide whether to move forward or back away. My whole body was tense, as if ready to react to anything, but at the same time frozen. The sound didn't come again immediately, which only made things worse, because now it felt like whoever was there knew I was nearby. I took a slow step toward the hallway, feeling the air there colder, heavier for no clear reason. When I reached the entrance, I stopped again. The hallway was dark, with little light coming from the living room behind me. I tried to see the end where the bedrooms were, but I couldn't make out much beyond shadows. That's when I heard a slight shift, coming from inside one of the bedrooms. It wasn't loud. It was controlled, like someone moving carefully. That made my heart race instantly. I took a step back without realizing it. my instinct screaming to get out of there. I backed away a few more steps, returning to the living room, without taking my eyes off the hallway. My mind was no longer trying to understand, it just wanted to get out. I slowly turned my body, already thinking about heading straight to the front door and leaving the house. That's when I heard a sound behind me. Coming from the garage, a faint click, followed by a dry movement. I froze instantly. That was the internal garage door. I slowly turned my head, looking toward the kitchen. The door I had left open was now moving, closing on its own, very slowly, without force, as if someone were pushing it from the other side. I stood there without reacting, just watching it happen. When the door fully closed, the sound of the rain seemed more muffled. And in that moment, one thing became very clear in my mind. It wasn't just someone inside the house. It was someone moving between both sides, as if they were controlling where I could go. Story 4. My name is Caleb. I was 11 years old when this happened, and to this day I remember every detail of that night. I lived with my parents in a suburban house in Florida, one of those very common ones with a front porch and a glass door that led directly into the living room. My parents usually went to sleep early during the week, so I would often stay up later watching TV in the living room. That night was a normal day, nothing different. I was on the couch with the TV on low volume, just enough not to make too much noise and wake anyone up. The house was quiet, just the sound of the television and occasionally the distant noise of a car passing on the street. I remember looking forward without thinking, kind of distracted, and that's when I saw it. On the other side of the glass door on the porch, there was someone sitting. At first, I thought it was a neighbor, maybe someone who had come to talk to my parents and was sitting there waiting. The streetlight lightly illuminated the porch so I could see the outline of a person sitting in the chair that was near the door. But there was something strange about the way he was. He didn't move. Not at all. He didn't move his head, didn't adjust his posture, nothing. I kept looking for a few seconds, trying to understand if that made sense. My first reaction was to think he might be waiting for someone, maybe my parents, and just hadn't knocked on the door yet. But the more I looked, the stranger it felt. He was completely still. He didn't even seem to be breathing. The way he was sitting was also strange, kind of stiff, like he wasn't actually relaxed. I even waited for him to get up or knock on the door, but nothing happened. After a while, I started to feel a discomfort that I couldn't really explain. I looked around the living room as if that would help me think better. The TV was still playing, everything looked the same, but that presence outside didn't fit with the rest. I thought about getting up and going to the door to see better, but something stopped me. The idea of getting close to that glass, knowing he was on the other side, didn't feel right. So I stayed where I was, just watching from a distance. Time passed and nothing changed. He stayed exactly in the same position, looking into the house. At times I had the feeling he was looking directly at me, even though I couldn't see his face clearly because of the lighting and the reflection on the glass. That started to make me more nervous than I wanted to admit. I tried to ignore it. Looked back at the TV for a few seconds, but then I looked again. He was still there. Same position, still. That's when I started thinking about calling my parents. I didn't want to do it for nothing, because it could just be someone we knew or some simple situation. But it was already too strange to ignore. I slowly got up from the couch, trying not to make much noise, and stood looking toward the door. My heart started beating faster, and I felt that alert sensation that I normally don't feel at home. I took a few steps toward the staircase that led upstairs. I climbed a few steps slowly, trying not to make noise, and called my parents quietly at first. I didn't get a response. I went up a bit more and called again, this time a little louder. That's when I heard some movement in their room, like someone shifting in bed. I quickly said there was someone on the porch, trying to explain without even really knowing what to say. My dad answered something confused, still half asleep, asking what I was talking about. Meanwhile, I stood there on the stairs, looking down at the living room. And that's when I saw the first change. The man on the porch moved. It wasn't fast. It was slow. He started to stand up from the chair. The movement was strange, kind of stiff, as if it was taking longer than normal for him to fully stand up. I felt my stomach tighten immediately because until then he hadn't made any movement. Now he was standing. I stayed frozen in the middle of the stairs, staring at the glass door. My dad was still getting up upstairs, and I knew he would come down at any moment, but at that instant it felt like I was alone with that. The man finished standing up and stayed still for a second, still facing the house. The way he moved was strange, A bit too slow, as if every movement was being thought out before happening. I couldn't see his face clearly, just a dark outline against the faint streetlight. And then, without making any gesture, he turned his body. It wasn't a quick turn. It was gradual, as if he was adjusting little by little. Then he started walking toward the side of the porch. Slow steps, almost silent. I followed him with my eyes barely blinking. When he left the field of view of the door, I expected to hear the sound of him stepping off the porch or walking through the yard. But I didn't hear anything. No footsteps, no gate, nothing. I stayed there for a few seconds, trying to hear anything that would confirm where he had gone. Nothing. The silence returned to normal, just the sound of the TV downstairs and a faint noise of wind outside. My dad started coming down the stairs, still confused, asking what was going on. I went down a few steps again and pointed to the door, saying there had been someone there, that I had seen him. He went straight to the living room, turned on the main light, and went to the glass door. When he got there and looked outside, there was no one. He opened the door and took a quick look at the porch, then at the front yard. Nothing. The chair was still there exactly as before. No sign that anyone had been there. He even stepped a little outside the house, looking around, but came back shortly after, saying there was no one. I stayed there looking at the door, trying to understand how someone could simply disappear like that without making any sound. My dad tried to reassure me right away, saying it could have been a neighbor or someone passing by and that I got confused because of the light, but I knew what I had seen. I described exactly where the man had been sitting, how he hadn't moved, the way he stood up and walked away. He listened, but I could tell he wasn't taking it completely seriously. Even so, he went to the side of the house, walked all the way around, checked the gate, the front yard. Nothing. No sign of anyone. We went back inside and he locked the front door, something he normally didn't even do at that time. The TV was still on, but now it felt louder than before. I didn't want to stay alone in the living room anymore, so I stayed closer to the stairs while he turned off some lights. Before going back upstairs, he looked at me and asked if I was sure about what I had seen. I said yes without hesitation, and the worst part is that at that moment I still had the feeling that it wasn't over. It had just moved out of sight. I ended up going upstairs with him, more because I didn't want to stay alone downstairs than anything else. I went to my room, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to hear any sound coming from the front of the house. Nothing. After a while, I got up slowly and went to my bedroom window, which faced the side. I tried to see the porch from another angle, but I couldn't see much from there. The street was quiet as always, no movement. The next morning, I went downstairs before my parents, still thinking about it. I went straight to the glass door and looked at the porch. Everything looked normal. But when I got closer, I noticed something that made my stomach drop again. The chair where the man had been sitting was not exactly in the same position. It was slightly turned, a few centimeters out of place. It wasn't obvious, but I remembered how it had been before. That was enough for me to be sure of one thing to this day. No matter what my parents thought that night, someone really was out there watching me. Story 5. My name is Emily, I'm 22 years old, and I live alone in a small apartment building in a college town in the interior of Ohio. I moved there because of college, and I chose that place because it was cheap and relatively close to campus. The building was simple, 2 floors with external corridors that gave direct access to the apartment doors. It wasn't a dangerous place, but it also wasn't very busy, especially at night. That week it had rained a lot, and that night the rain was constant, the kind that doesn't stop and leaves everything with a continuous background sound. I was in my room studying with my laptop open and some books spread across the bed. It must have been close to midnight when I started hearing footsteps outside. At first, I didn't think it was strange. It was normal to hear people passing through the corridor, especially other students coming home late. But after a few seconds, I started to notice something different. The footsteps weren't going straight from one point to another. They would stop, stay for a few seconds in front of a door, and then continue. That caught my attention in a way I couldn't ignore. I stayed silent, trying to listen more carefully. The sound of the footsteps was clear, even with the rain. The person would walk a few steps and stop, stay there for a few seconds, and then continue. It didn't sound like someone looking for a specific apartment. It sounded like someone checking each door. That gave me an immediate sense of discomfort. I lowered the volume on my laptop and just listened, trying to follow the rhythm. With each pause, I felt my body grow more tense, waiting for the sound to start again. After a few moments, the footsteps got closer. I could tell the person was already on my side of the corridor. My door was roughly in the middle, so I knew that at some point they would stop there too. That's when I slowly got up from the bed and went to the bedroom window, which gave a partial view of the corridor through a gap in the curtain. I didn't want to expose myself completely, so I pulled it just enough to look without being seen. I peeked carefully through the gap, trying to stay as far from the glass as possible. The corridor lighting was dim, a yellowish bulb that made everything look slightly undefined. Even so, I could see. It was a man. He was walking slowly along the corridor, very close to the doors, as if he were analyzing each one. His posture was strange, slightly leaning forward as if he was trying to listen to something inside the apartments. He stopped at each door for a few seconds, completely still, and then moved on. My heart started beating faster immediately. That didn't look like someone searching for a specific place. It was too deliberate. I kept watching, trying to understand what he was doing when he stopped in front of one of the apartments closest to mine. He stood there for a few seconds without moving. Then he took 2 steps and stopped right in front of my door. My whole body froze. I stepped away from the window immediately, almost by reflex, afraid he might see me watching. My heart was racing and I tried to control my breathing so I wouldn't make any noise. I stood in the middle of the room looking toward the door, as if that would help me understand what would happen next. Outside, there were no more footsteps. That meant he was still there, standing, right in front of my door. A few seconds later, I heard the sound, the doorknob turning slowly. It wasn't a sudden movement, nor an attempt to force the door. It was slow, as if he was carefully testing it just to see if it was locked. The metallic sound was low, but clear enough to pass through the door. I felt a cold sensation run through my body instantly. I knew I had locked it. I always lock it. Even so, hearing that close made it feel like the door could open at any moment. After the first movement, another came, even slower, as if he was applying a bit more pressure this time. The doorknob turned to its limit and returned, making a faint, dry click. I stayed completely still, not making any sound, with the feeling that any movement on my part could change whatever was happening outside. My mind started racing with possibilities, none of them good. I thought about calling the police, but at the same time I was afraid of making any noise that would reveal I was there alone. Then suddenly it stopped. No more movement on the doorknob. No footsteps moving away. Just silence. That was what made me the most nervous, because it meant he was still there, on the other side of the door. I waited to hear footsteps leaving, that normal sound of someone giving up and continuing down the corridor. But none of that happened. It was as if he had simply decided to stay there, standing, waiting. I stood there for a time I can't really measure. It could have been seconds or several minutes, but it felt much longer. The silence outside was heavy, almost pressing, as if someone was just inches from the door without making any sound. I tried to convince myself he might have left without me hearing because of the rain, but it didn't feel true. My whole body was still on alert, as if it knew he was still there. After a few minutes, I couldn't handle the uncertainty anymore. I slowly approached the door, each step measured so I wouldn't make any noise. I stood there with my ear close to the wood, trying to hear anything. Nothing. Then very carefully I leaned in slightly to look through the peephole. At first I saw nothing but the dim light of the corridor, but after a second I realized he was still there, standing very close to the door. I froze with my eyes still on the peephole, trying to understand exactly what I was seeing. He was so close that the image looked slightly distorted, but I could clearly see the silhouette of his body motionless. It didn't look like he was looking down the corridor or at other doors. It looked like he was focused exactly on mine. That gave me a very bad feeling, as if he knew I was there on the other side. I slowly stepped away, trying not to make any sound. My mind was no longer trying to find explanations. It had gone past that point. I thought about grabbing my phone and calling the police, but I was afraid the sound of the call could be heard outside. So I stood there in the middle of the room, staring at the door, waiting for anything to happen. And that's when I heard a different sound. Not the doorknob this time. A light touch on the wood, as if someone had placed their hand on the door. I felt a shiver run up my arm instantly. It wasn't a normal knock, it wasn't someone calling. It was slow, dragging, as if a hand was lightly sliding across the surface of the door. That was what disturbed me the most up to that moment. It was too close, too intimate. I stood completely still, trying not to react at all. After that touch, nothing else came. No movement, no footsteps. Just the silence of the corridor and the rain in the background. I couldn't stay there much longer. I carefully grabbed my phone and went into the bathroom, closing the door very slowly. I stayed in there for a few minutes, just trying to breathe properly and think about what to do. I didn't turn on the light, I just stayed in the dark, listening. After a while, I realized I couldn't hear anything outside anymore. No footsteps, no doorknob, nothing. When I finally worked up the courage to come out and look through the peephole again, the corridor was empty. But to this day, what bothers me the most isn't that he tried to open the door. It's how long he stood there without doing anything, as if he knew I was waiting for some kind of reaction. Story 6. My name is Hannah. I'm 36 years old and I live alone in an old 2-story house in an older neighborhood in South Carolina. The house has that slightly old structure, with an external wooden staircase that leads directly to the second floor, where the bedrooms are. I don't use that entrance much, usually only the main door on the ground floor, but it's still there, giving direct access to my bedroom door. I always thought it was a bit strange, but I never had any problems with it. The neighborhood is quiet, not much movement at night, and everyone more or less knows each other. That night it had been raining heavily since the evening. It was a constant storm, with wind hitting the trees and that continuous sound of rain on the roof. I was in my bedroom on the second floor, already getting ready to sleep. The lights were off, with only a dim lamp on in the corner. I remember lying in bed looking at my phone when I heard the first sound. Footsteps coming from outside. At first I thought it was just the noise of the rain mixed with the wind, but then it became clear. They were footsteps going up the external staircase. I sat up in bed immediately, trying to listen better. The sound was slow, one step at a time, with that faint creaking of the wooden stairs accompanying it. That wasn't normal. No one used that staircase at night, much less during a storm like that. My whole body went on alert. I stayed still, mentally counting each step, as if that would help me understand when the person would reach the top. After a few seconds, the sound stopped. That could only mean one thing. The person was already at the top, right outside the second floor door. I stayed still for a few moments, looking toward the window, trying to decide whether to look or not. The idea of getting closer and seeing someone there that close didn't feel right. Even so, curiosity took over. I slowly got out of bed and went to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to look without being seen. When I looked, my stomach dropped instantly. He was already up there, standing right in front of the second floor door. The faint light from the street partially illuminated the staircase, so I could see his outline clearly enough. It was a man, tall, completely still, facing the door. He wasn't trying to get in, he wasn't knocking, he wasn't doing anything. He was just there, standing. The way he stood there didn't feel normal. It didn't have that behavior of someone who arrives and is about to knock or call out. It was as if he was already waiting for something. I watched for a few seconds, trying to understand if he would make any movement. Nothing, not even his head moved. The rain kept falling heavily around him, soaking him completely, but he didn't seem to react to it. That gave me a very strange feeling, as if he wasn't there for any ordinary reason. I slowly stepped away from the window, feeling my whole body tense. My mind started racing with possibilities, none of them good. I thought about calling the police, but at the same time I wasn't sure what to say. Someone was standing outside my door doing nothing. That sounded strange even to explain. I stood in the middle of the room for a few seconds, trying to decide what to do, while listening to the rain and the wind outside. That's when I heard the sound, very faint. The doorknob of the external door, moving. It wasn't a sudden movement. It was slow, controlled, as if someone was testing it, turning it carefully to see if it was locked. My heart started racing immediately. I had locked that door. I always lock it. Even so, hearing that close made it feel like it could open at any moment. I stood completely still, staring toward the door, unable to react. After the first movement, another came, even slower, as if he was applying a bit more force this time. The doorknob turned to its limit and came back, making that dry metal sound that seems louder than it actually is when everything is silent. I felt my hands go cold instantly. My body didn't want to move, but at the same time my mind was screaming for me to do something. I kept staring at the door, waiting for the next movement. Then it stopped. Again. No sound of footsteps going down the stairs. No stronger attempt to open it. Just silence. That was what made me the most nervous, because it meant he was still there, on the other side of the door. standing. I took a few very slow steps backward, moving away from the door, trying not to make any noise. My breathing was short, controlled as if any sound could draw attention, and in that moment I had a certainty I couldn't ignore. He wasn't trying to break in. He was waiting. I stood in the middle of the room, not knowing how much time had passed. The rain continued outside, hitting hard, but now it felt distant. All my attention was on the door. I tried to listen for anything, a step, a movement, any sign that he had gone away. Nothing. The silence out there was too heavy. I took a few more steps back, standing closer to the opposite wall as if that created some kind of safe distance. After a few minutes, the uncertainty started to bother me more than the fear. I needed to know if he was still there. I approached the window again, this time even more slowly. I pulled the curtain just a little and looked. He wasn't there anymore. The staircase was empty, the rain falling the same way with no sign of movement. That should have made me feel relieved, but it didn't, because I hadn't heard him go down. I hadn't heard any footsteps. I stepped away from the window with that bad feeling in my chest, as if something had changed without me noticing when. The fact that I hadn't heard him go down the stairs wouldn't leave my mind. That staircase always makes noise, even with care. There was no way someone could leave without making any sound. I stood in the middle of the room looking around, trying to hear anything inside the house now. The silence felt different, more enclosed. That's when I heard a sound that was no longer coming from outside, a faint creak, coming from the internal hallway on the second floor. My whole body froze instantly. I slowly turned my head toward my bedroom door, trying to listen better. The sound came again, very faint, like someone stepping carefully on the wooden floor. That didn't make sense. There was no way someone could have come in through that door. I was sure it was locked. I stood there staring at my bedroom door, trying to understand whether that was real or if my mind was trying to fill something in. The sound came again, a little clearer this time. One step, then a short pause, and then another. Slow, controlled, like someone walking carefully to avoid making noise. That made my heart race in a way I could feel in my chest and hands. I took a few steps back without realizing, moving away from the door. My mind tried to find any logical explanation, but none made sense. I had locked the external door. I had heard the doorknob being tested, and now there was someone inside. I didn't approach the door. I didn't try to open it. I just stood there staring, waiting for anything to happen. And then after a few seconds, I heard the last sound. Right on the other side of my bedroom door, a light touch on the doorknob, slow, as if someone was testing it, exactly like before.
I'm really grateful for staying until the last minute. It's always good to know that you're here, listening to every detail. If you liked it, comment which part was the scariest for you. And of course, sign up to keep listening to stories as dark as this one. See you in the next video.